And welcome back, everybody, to the next edition of Summer with the Stars. This is episode 3. I'm Owen Newkirk, and today I'm joined by a guy who's very familiar with Texas Stars fans, but just recently became official with the Stars organization for the second time. Kevin Connauton, defenseman, who had to go through sort of being a little bit uncertain for the first time in your pro career, a restricted free agent, signed a new 3-year deal with the Dallas Stars. First of all, Kevin, congratulations on the new contract. That had to be a big weight off your shoulders because this is the first time you've had to go through that as a pro.
Oh yeah, definitely a huge weight. Kind of going into summer, didn't really know what to expect. Like you said, it was a first for me and a new experience. So when the season ended, didn't really think about it too much. Just thought I'd kind of relax and let everything fall into place. And fortunately, it happened quite a bit sooner than I had expected. I was under the assumption that it'd be more towards July that those kind of things would be going on, and luckily I was able to get things done pretty early here and get that thing all signed up and official well before I had planned.
Now, that kind of leads me right into my next thought, which is, and I mean this in absolutely the best way possible, but you haven't yet played in the NHL. And obviously you were traded from the Vancouver organization back in April to the Dallas Stars organization and went here to Texas. But not only have you yet to really make get your chance to play on the big stage, but they did this early. So my question, obviously in a real friendly way, is what do you think, or what did they say that they saw in you? Because it wasn't as though they gave you a 1-year deal, 2-way, and a question mark. You've got a couple, and congratulations, by the way, years 2 and 3, 1-way contract. It sounds like Dallas has a pretty high expectation and thought of the future with you.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it is, for me, it's a huge confidence builder. I think that's them showing that they have belief in what I can do, and that they're confident in what I'm going to be able to bring to the table these next couple of years. Obviously, never have playing a game in the NHL is, it makes me pretty grateful for the contract that I did receive. I understand that all they had to do technically within the rules is give me that 1-year qualifying offer, and the fact that they reached out and gave me more than that was extremely fortunate, and something that I was very happy with and very thankful for. So, I think, like I said, I'm just going to use it as a real big positive, and it's up to me to prove to them that they made the right decision. They can only do so much as far as give you opportunities, and I think that all I really ask for is just a chance to show what I can do. Get an opportunity to prove myself in that league and prove that I can play there, and the rest of it's kind of up to me. And at the end of the day, you can live with yourself if you gave it everything you had and you got an opportunity to show that.
Well, I think
so
what's
that's
even
something that I'm really looking forward to hopefully getting.
what I think what's even more remarkable about it, Kevin, is the fact that you guys came to terms with new management in Dallas, especially because the trade that took place was under the eyes of then Dallas general manager Joe Nieuwendyk. You had to make a very good impression again with Jim Nill in a very short amount of time, with the end of the regular season and then playoffs. Has your relationship and your interactions with the new Dallas GM been? It seems to me, based on the contracts, have been gone pretty well so far.
Yeah, I mean, I had a really good exit meeting with him. It was great to kind of meet him and be able to sit down and talk for a bit. I think that the last 2 years before, or 2.5 years before I was traded to Texas, I played quite a few games out in Grand Rapids, and I'm sure he was watching those games. And actually, he had mentioned that he'd watched me play a number of times at Western Michigan when I was going to college there. So I think that maybe he'd seen me play before, and I guess you kind of always got to keep in the back of your mind. You never know who's watching, and this might have been one of those cases where it's paying off now. And yeah, like I said, I'm just extremely grateful for being able to sign that contract and like I'm going to be doing everything I can to make the most of it.
Now, I'm sure, have been paying attention to Dallas's offseason moves, and they signed a guy who, let's face it, we grew up, both you and I, watching, Sergei Gonchar, who's a guy that I would imagine you must be pretty excited to be playing with come training camp in September, because you both have some similarities in your styles of play.
Yeah, he's an unbelievable defenseman, and I definitely grew up watching him and kind of idolizing him. So he'll be pretty special walking the locker room, being able to kind of be around him and hopefully be able to pick his brain a bit and just kind of learn from him. And that's always a good thing when you have guys like that in the locker room, and you're, as a young guy at least, and as a guy who hopefully will be playing in his first year, being able to use him as a resource. I think that's something you definitely need to take advantage of.
One last sort of serious hard question, then we'll back off and be a little more fun. But just looking at the guys signed right now for Dallas, 7 guys on NHL contracts: Gonchar, Daly, Goligoski, Brendan Dillon, Robidas, Roman, Larson, and then you have guys like 8 more guys under contract on the blue line. You, Alexiak, Nemeth, Morrow, Labrie, and then coming in Klingberg, Yoki, Paka, and Vance. That's not to mention the 3 guys that stand out to me as unrestricted free agents: Jordy Ben, of course, your captain, Fortunas, and fellow newcomer Cameron Gaunce. I'll tell you what, there is some pretty solid talent top to bottom with what Dallas is doing on their blue line, isn't it?
Yeah, it's obviously, I mean, you just said it, all the names there. It's a pretty deep back end that they got, with a lot of bodies and a lot of competition, and you can't really look into that too hard as a player. You got to just go into camp and worry about yourself and what you're doing. If you get too caught up in the roster or where you think you land on the depth chart, I think it definitely plays against you. I've been through that all before, though. My last 3 or 4 training camps that I went to Vancouver, they were absolutely stacked on D, and it almost seemed like impossible feat to make those teams. And I think, though, I learned from it, and you learn what kind of mentality you need to go into training camp with, and you can't be intimidated by it. You just got to know that you're there trying to earn a job and earn a roster spot, and there's only so much you can control, and that's why you have to make sure you're always focusing on what you're doing out there.
Well, aside from getting a new contract, which has to be obviously very exciting, which you talked about, you're also, and again, I'm not calling you old because you're obviously still a lot younger than I am, you're no longer waiver exempt. What does that feel like?
Yeah, that's kind of new too. I remember I didn't even know that was part of it all until kind of after the season ended. Obviously, it's a good thing to have, I think, because it gives you that much more opportunity. Maybe if you're playing well, that maybe a team doesn't want to lose you, or that possibly another team could get you. But as of right now, I'm hoping that whole waiver thing is never an issue or used or whatever you want to call it. I hope that I'm able to stay with Dallas. I mean, that's what I'm training for all summer. I'm planning on making that team next year, and I'm going in with the mentality that I'm fighting for a job.
Kind of an interesting twist here, because if you look back to where you could have been with the Vancouver Canucks organization, they just announced this past Friday that they are moving their AHL affiliate to the Utica. They'll be the Utica Comets in upstate New York. Now, I'm not presuming that you would have necessarily been in the AHL to start next year, but it's kind of an interesting thought to think of that you were in Chicago, you started your career in Manitoba, that's, of course, in Winnipeg, you came down here to Central Texas. Boy, talk about some changes for the Vancouver AHL organization to go from Western Canada to the Midwest and then now to upstate New York. It's definitely a totally different environment for those players, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I just know from our little group that we had that started together in Manitoba, even moving to Chicago was quite a bit of a change for us. It's never easy moving to a new city every year kind of thing. And I think, though, the move to New York is a good one because Vancouver owns that franchise now, and I think they're going to have a little more control than they did the last 2 years, kind of playing as just an affiliate without ownership of the team. So, yeah, you know, I think those guys are all excited for kind of a new change of scenery, and you know, I haven't really talked to them about it yet, but I'm sure I'll talk to a couple of my buddies out there that see how they're feeling. Yeah, like I said, I think it's going to be a positive for the guys that are playing the AHL.
I want to go back. We talked a little bit about it during the season once you came here. It was April 2nd, the trade, Derek Roy to Vancouver, you and a second-round pick went to Dallas, then you, of course, came right here to Texas. What was your impression of the Texas Stars before you joined this team? Because as a member of Chicago, you played them 4 times last year before joining the first-place Stars.
Yeah, I mean, they were obviously at the top of the league, and they're always a hard team to play against. I remember thinking that, you know, guys. I remember we always loved going on the Texas road trip. That was one thing when we saw Texas on the schedule. That was a treat heading down there. It was just, yeah, they were just a really, really disciplined team that played hard, and it seemed like no matter what roster they were putting on the ice, they always brought the same game kind of thing. So it's definitely a hard system to play against when you feel like it's always the same.
Now,
and,
when you were traded, is that hard to go to a team that you've of guys that let's face it, you probably aren't really enamored with, especially because when you play them 4 or 5 times, you start to maybe not like a few of the guys you play against just because both, you know, teams are competing so hard. That's sort of the nature of the beast.
Yeah, I think though in hockey it's pretty easy to walk into a new locker room. Everyone's kind of on the same page that what happens on the ice doesn't really carry over. There's been lots of times, you know, you get guys traded to your team that you've either, you know, fought or battled hard against in the past, and those guys end up being sometimes your best buddies when they come back over. So I wasn't too worried about that. I don't think the rivalry between Chicago and Texas was really that big that was going to affect anything. And I kind of knew a few guys that had played there and said the group was really good. So for me, it was just really exciting, and I was looking forward to kind of everything that was coming with the trade. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I was pumped to kind of join that team and hit the reset button and get to know all the guys.
It's kind of interesting, too, because you played with Antoine Roussel in Chicago last year. And when I say last year, I mean the 11-12 season. Francis Wattier fought Roussel in a game between Texas and Chicago. And, boy, they didn't seem to really like each other that much. Now, as Wattier told us during our first episode of the summer series, that he's one of his really good friends now. And look, here you and he might be reunited as members of the Dallas Stars. It's just amazing how small the hockey world can be sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's crazy how small it is. I think that, you know, at this level, you just about know at least one guy on every team around the league, and either you played with them or grew up in the same city as them. And, yeah, like that's exactly. I remember that fight between Roos and Watt. And I know that if I played against Roos ever, I'd hate him. So, yeah, it's a small world, and it's funny how he came down here, and hopefully we're teammates next year. And yeah, like it's just something that when you're playing against guys, whether they're your friends or not, you're playing hard, and off the ice, everyone for the most part really gets along.
Were you a little surprised at all? And I mean it in a good way that Roussel was able to turn just an amazing season with Texas, because he set career highs in half a season compared to what he did the year before in Chicago, and then all of a sudden go up and he's still a question mark, and now you think of him, he's an integral part of the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, of course. You know, you're always happy for guys when they succeed and move on with their careers, and I think a guy like Roos is probably not. If you look at that Chicago roster we had, he's probably not necessarily the guy you expected to be in the NHL next year, and I don't mean that in any disrespect to him. I think he's a great player, and he's one of those guys, though, that, you know, he works so hard that if he ever got the chance, he would take full advantage of it, and that's a huge credit to him. He he earned everything that he has right now, and he's never going to be the guy that you think doesn't deserve to be there. That's for sure. He's the guy that, like I said, he works for everything he has, and he definitely deserves to be where he is. And he's proven probably quite a few people wrong, and that's really good for him.
Going to your first couple of games with the Texas Stars, I know you were trying to establish yourself and sort of get comfortable with the new team. Couple games in, the team's in Charlotte, and I know that you can recall this because players don't score overtime winners that often. Can you walk us through what happened 9 seconds into overtime on April 12th when you found the net to give the Stars the win over the Checkers?
Yeah. I remember I missed the net point blank with about 1 second left in the game, and I was so rattled about that. And then I ended up starting for overtime, and finally cleared my head. We just started the period, and I remember Mo pushed the draw forward, skated up the left side, and then made an unbelievable move on their D-man and kind of got to the middle. And then he took a shot, and goalie made the initial save, and it kind of kicked out to the slot, and I jumped up as a late guy, and he kind of pushed over to my right side, and all I was thinking was just kind of throw it towards the net because Seaves and Mo were both there. So I took a little backhand slap shot just trying to get the puck kind of in their direction, and it ended up finding its way in, which was a pretty good feeling.
I can't imagine that it's very difficult to establish yourself with your new teammates any easier than scoring big goals like that early on in your tenure with a new club.
Yeah, that obviously helps. It feels good to kind of do something like that to help the team win, especially when you're one of the new guys, and it makes the whole getting to know each other process a little easier, I guess. So that was a big goal, and it definitely was a positive for me coming in that late to the team.
Now, you kind of make a habit of this early on in your career with a new team. I know you haven't changed teams that much in your pro career. You've been in the AHL now for a couple of seasons, and in your first ever professional game with Manitoba, and I'll give you the date because I'm sure you couldn't. I don't know if you could necessarily rattle that off the top of your head. October 8th, 2010. You're in Peoria, and the game is tied. You're down to about 5 minutes to go the third period. All of a sudden, with 4:13 left in regulation, this young kid making his pro debut, Kevin Connauton, scores to make it 4-3, and Manitoba wins. What was it like to score your first pro goal and score such a meaningful game winner in the first time you've ever skated in a pro hockey game?
That one was. I remember that one was really. That was a real nice one for me, just because, like you said, as the young guy, I think I was one of the, if not the youngest guy on the team, maybe the second youngest guy on the team. Fresh out of junior, kind of just starting to learn the pro life and the pro game, and didn't really know everyone too well. And it was pretty exciting to be able to be the guy to get the game winner on that one. I remember a bunch of guys had put money on the board for the game winning goal too, so I was pretty happy about that. I collected a few bucks after the game, which was nice.
So now that you've done that, you also, I have to mention this, just kind of pat you on the back a little bit. You had a pretty solid All-Star weekend 2 years ago. It wasn't last year's All-Star game, but the 2012 All-Star game. Go to Atlantic City. Was that your first trip to Atlantic City?
Yeah, I'd never been there before.
What was that experience like? Because I'll pump you up a little bit more. You won the hardest shot contest, 99.4, and then in the All-Star game, here comes this game-winning goal thing again. You go out and score the 8th goal of the game. You went the Western Conference All-Stars were down 6-1 after the first period, and then you score with just a few minutes left to make it 8-7 and win it for the West. I mean, boy, I guess some guys just have the luck for shooting those game winners, huh?
Well, we won that game in a shootout. I tied it up with.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay, so you tied it at 7, but nonetheless, big goal.
Still,
that
was it was exciting though. Regardless, it was I mean, yeah, like that was kind of just a fun weekend. Got to meet some new guys, and the skills competition was really good, and the fans were enjoying it. I definitely didn't expect to win the hardest shot. I've always, I guess, kind of growing up, I was the guy with the slap shot or whatever. But I mean, I didn't think that with the other guys competing in that competition that I would take the title on that one. But obviously, it's a good feather in your cap, and I was excited about it. And scoring a goal in the game was pretty cool. It's kind of a weird game. It's kind of everyone doesn't want to be going too hard or too physical, but towards the end of the game, you get the feeling like you really want to win, and it started picking up the pace, which was really cool. And yeah, it was nice to score that one. It's kind of weird how it happened. I got a breakaway somehow as a D-man, but all-star games, things like that are a little more likely to occur than something you'd find in the regular season. So yeah, it was really cool, and I had a really good time.
You might be suggesting that you shouldn't be in that position during a real regular season game, huh?
Yeah, I was a little out of position but it worked out for me.
Tell me a little bit. We'll go back to some serious stuff here. The playoffs this year. You've been fortunate to be in the postseason each of your 3 AHL seasons. This year with Texas, there was obviously a lot of expectations because of the fact the Stars won the division and finished first in the Western Conference. You go into Milwaukee. And this is a fairly young Stars team, even though they had a lot of success in the regular season. A lot of guys had never played in the playoffs at the pro level, or at least in the AHL level. You were one of the guys that actually had a little bit of experience, along with some of the older Stars players, guys like Toby Peterson and Wattier, Morin, Fortunas, Sevier. But even with that said, did you feel as though after beating Milwaukee in the first round that the Stars were in pretty good shape? Was the confidence there?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought we were in great shape. I think that we had a really, really solid team this year. And, I think everyone was on board for going deep into the playoffs, too. We wanted to win. And after that Milwaukee series, we were confident. And, it obviously didn't work out the way we'd wanted to against Oak City. But I think everyone in that room was expecting to, go a little farther than we did. But that's hockey. Sometimes, the higher seed doesn't always win the series, and that's what makes playoffs exciting.
What's the hardest part of that series with Oklahoma City? Was it the clinching game, or was there another part of that best? It's a best of 7. It was in 5 games. Was there something else that might have been more difficult to swallow when you look back on it?
I think we just got really frustrated. I think that their goaltender played unbelievable, and he definitely made some saves on some chances that in other games, we were putting away. And I think that was big for them. I think that kind of took a little bit of wind out of our sails. We almost felt like, we can't beat this guy in a sense because, we didn't really score that many goals in the playoffs. I think that our offense definitely died down in the postseason, which hurt us. So, yeah, I think there was a number of things. Oak City was a good team. They played well, and we had chances to win games. I think that first game, that overtime loss, hurt us, losing that at home. And, yeah, I think it was a frustrating series. At least that's how I felt personally. And it's, you learn from it, though. You use that, and you learn from it, and you take it with you.
I can tell from the tone of your voice that you're still frustrated about it, as we all are. But on a positive note, you did lead the team in points during the postseason. Do you think that helped a little bit in terms of not only it was of the 3 years you've been in the Calder Cup playoffs, it was by far your most offensive. Do you think that production definitely helped going forward and getting your new deal with Dallas?
Yeah, I'm sure it maybe played a little part in it, but I don't know. A lot of people have been saying that, like, whenever they talk to me about, you led the team in points in the playoffs. I don't really look at it that way. It's kind of, you're fortunate to get those numbers, and I'm obviously better known for being an offensive D-man, so I always want to be someone who's producing. But, yeah, I don't know. Like, in the playoffs, it's more, that that doesn't really mean much when your team loses and you're out. So it's I guess it's a nice little stat and all, but it doesn't really hold as much to me as it maybe sounds to other people.
Last question here, because I could talk to you all day, but you've had that sort of tag, that offensive defenseman, really great upside, and then obviously most offensive defensemen are criticized maybe for play in their own zone because they're so good offensively. Does that bother you that that's followed you around? Because I have a feeling you take a lot of pride in playing and learning both aspects of the game, not just trying to score points.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, it really bothers me. I feel like I got, my first couple of years there, I got labeled as this defensive liability, and the nice thing was, though, is that the only people that were saying that were the ones that didn't really have any say in my career, and I was hearing good things from, the management and the coaches that at the end of the day did hold the decision on where I end up. I think that if you're labeled as an offensive D-man, people automatically assume that you're poor defensively. That's just kind of the way it is, and that's the way every offensive D-man in hockey gets labeled. I've been working like crazy since college to improve the defensive side of the game. It's something I really pride myself on, and I know that I've improved. And you wouldn't play in certain situations if you were as bad defensively as some people make you out to be. So I just got to focus on where coaches are playing me and what they're saying. And like I said, obviously there's still tons of room for improvement, but it's definitely been a progressive movement for me, and it's one that continues getting better and one that I'm always going to be working on.
Well, I know that your journey started well before your year in Kalamazoo, but I would imagine that there'd be some interesting symmetry of spending time in Michigan, and now hopefully we'd love to have you back here with the Texas Stars for the upcoming season. Kind of hoping that you and that other Detroit guy, Jim Nill, the new Dallas Stars GM, we're watching on television this year instead of down here at Cedar Park Center. I know the fans would like to have you, but hopefully that the rest of your summer and going into training camp goes really well. Thanks, Kevin. We really appreciate you having on today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, and appreciate the call and the interview.
This is Kevin Connauton. This is the third episode of Summer with the Stars, and we'll be back next week with another great episode. Thanks so much for joining us. So long, everybody.